It's a bit of a warning relating to car repairs in Spain. Now, this isn't just my experience. Several other people have had similar, well, pretty much everybody I know in Spain's had similar experiences. Overcharging, phenomenally overcharging. Now, the repair I had done on the drive shaft on the van coming in coming in at €700, and they wanted to charge tax on top of that as well, which is even more extortionate. But when I talked to a friend of mine in the UK, the repair would have been about half the price. So they'd overcharged plus wanted tax, but even just without the tax, it was twice as much as it was the UK. And they say, oh, the parts are expensive. The parts are not expensive. I went to a motor parts that somebody directed me to the other day, and the prices are the same as the UK. Now, the other side of this being is I had an issue relating to the van bunny hopping as it went along the road. So I dropped by the mechanic and said, it's not running right. And they took it for a ride. Oh yeah, it's the fuel pump. A fuel pump for this van is about £500. I'm like, I don't think it's a fuel pump, because the fuel pump itself, it can have some various symptoms. But if it's a fuel problem, it's normally related to the fuel getting there or air getting in the system. And it wasn't completely disconnected. It wasn't affected. Like, for example, I went uphill. It didn't make any difference. Now, if you've got no pump, obviously gravity has more of an effect. So I didn't think it was a fuel pump. So I chatted with a few people on this Volkswagen Transporter forum over in the UK. And they said, no, that's not the fuel pump. It's not a new fuel pump you need. It's a new mechanic. And then when I looked at some of the things they said, oh, look for this, look for that, and I did the repairs myself. And instead of costing me £500 plus labour for a repair that didn't need doing, and no doubt they would have wanted to charge me extra to actually find the fault that they were originally supposed to fix, it ended up costing me €4. Because all it was is the hoses on the top of the injectors that feed back to the fuel pump that circulated back through. Because what happens, because they're split, it was sucking in air, and air was getting into the fuel system, and it was causing it to like sort of choke, because it's a bit like coughing. It's the same sort of symptoms. So be aware that a lot of mechanics do not know how to fault find. And I know my friend Keith had a similar thing with his drive shaft, because they went around his guys, oh, you need this, you need that, and eventually they got to the drive shaft. They were just like, change that, change this, change that. They don't know how to fault find. I don't know what it is. I know somebody said there's no apprenticeship of that here. I know Steve down in Ibiza's had the same thing, even from a main dealer, where they didn't do the repairs and servicing he'd requested on a new vehicle, to the point the only thing they did do was change the tyre, and they didn't even manage to put all the wheel nuts back on. So be very, very careful with mechanics in Spain. I would recommend getting Google out on some of the stuff and looking yourself. Doesn't mean you have to do the repair yourself, but it does mean that you could go on Google. Like I said, it was hoses on mine. It was a very simple fault finding process. Yes, it took me a while because I had to change hose by hose, and eventually I found the leaks. But in the same way, I found another fault that was causing some sparking on the glow plug. I repaired that myself because there was some bad wiring in there, which was another Spanish mechanic. So stuff to be aware of. Now, I'm not running down mechanics before somebody gets all upset on it. I'm saying some of these people will rip you off, and are they doing it on purpose? I would say yes, but also because they haven't got the knowledge and experience to actually fault find, then they're just going to go, oh, just change that, it's only £300, instead of going, well, it's not that, because I know that it's working, because I can test that with a meter. I can test a fuel pump by putting some power on it and getting it to pump fuel, so I can see fuel circulating, etc. Because there's very simple ways of testing bits in your car. An alternator, for example, an alternator is very simple. You can see a charge. If your battery is at the right level, what you do is, like, you put a meter across it, check what the load is, and then when you start the engine, it'll go up to about 14 volts. That tells you the alternator is working. There's all sorts of things that are basic mechanics, but it seems they just don't bother. Don't know, don't bother. Whichever it is, it's an expensive mistake that we have to pay for. I highly recommend Google and at least looking at the faults yourself, or getting somebody that knows exactly what they're doing. Don't just trust a garage because other people have gone there, because I've seen the drive shaft cost at €700, for example. 3 people got the same quote at different garages, and the drive shaft doesn't cost that much. It doesn't cost that much for the repair either. They're exploiting the cost of parts, they're exploiting the cost of the actual repair itself. Then they're going, oh, it's expensive. No, it's not. It isn't. The parts aren't expensive. They're no more expensive than they are in the UK. If you do struggle for parts, do what Keith did. He ordered them from Germany. Or you do what I did. I just went down to the motor parts and got the bits I needed. One thing I didn't do is rely on the garage to get the parts. I know it's a bit of a rant today, but stuff like this really annoys me because it's basic thieving. Alright, thanks for watching. Yeah.